We honor the memory of Martin Luther King, not with ceremony and rhetoric, but with action. And with action inspired by the bold but forgotten campaign that Martin Luther King pioneered and championed in the very last year of his life. In that year, he could have basked in the triumphs of the passage of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, his winning of the Nobel Prize. But instead, he decided to open a new chapter in the struggle for civil rights, a chapter that would attempt to eliminate the racial economic disadvantage and end poverty once and for all. The achievement of voter rights and the end of legal discrimination were crucial achievements, but Martin Luther King knew that the enduring economic bondage of African Americans could not be lifted without an economic liberation. It's important that everyone can go to a restaurant, can go to a hotel, can go to a bar and be served. It's important that everyone can sit on a bus, on a plane, and a train. But if you don't have the money to afford these things, you can't exercise your rights. As Martin Luther King pointed out, our nation promises to give everyone life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But if we don't have a job and income, we have neither life or liberty or the possibility of the pursuit of happiness. Now, in that final year, Martin Luther King launched what he called the Poor People's Campaign. And he put forward two radical proposals that we need to remember. First, he called for a federal job guarantee where our government would ensure that everyone would have the opportunity to have a job that could support themselves at a fair wage with dignity. Secondly, he called for strengthening union rights and ending poverty wages to level the playing field between employer and employee. We all remember that in his last days, he went to Memphis to stand shoulder and shoulder with the striking sanitation workers. But what we forget is his bold economic agenda for guaranteed jobs at fair wages with dignity. Now, there's one person who remembered the campaign for guaranteed jobs. And 6 years after the death of Martin Luther King, after his assassination, his widow, Coretta Scott King, set up a national committee for full employment. And she organized a lot of rallies, went to Washington, and attempted to get our lawmakers to pass a federal job guarantee. But her efforts fell on deaf ears. And here we are, 50 years after the death of Martin Luther King. And our nation has become the most economically unequal country with the least social mobility in the entire developed world. And the shameful difference in income and wealth between white and black has not disappeared. A nation can't be great if it allows such inequities to continue. We need to renew the final campaign with which Martin Luther King ended his life. We need to bring to Washington the campaign for a federal job guarantee so that we can provide the foundation of economic independence and security with which we can end once and for all the intergenerational poverty, the pipeline from school to prison, and all the other inequities that are staining our nation. Both our parties have failed to take up this struggle. I'm a Democrat, and I'm ashamed to say that the Democratic Party, which has relied so much on the loyal following of African Americans, has failed to advance the call for guaranteed jobs and the call for worker rights that Martin Luther King championed in his last days. But I want to change that. I want to change it and transform the political agenda of our country and of the Democratic Party by running for Congress in our 10th congressional district. I came to Athens 36 years ago to begin teaching philosophy at the University of Georgia. Later that year, that beautiful woman sitting over there decided to come marry me from India, and she's been serving our community as a labor lawyer and as an immigration lawyer since then. We've had 3 children who are all proud products of the Athens public school systems, and I'm happy to say that they're all giving me strong support in my campaign. But I need your support to carry the message to all the voters of the 10th district. We can do something great in our small town, rural Georgia district. We can be pioneers in changing the direction of our entire nation and bringing back the campaign for guaranteed jobs and worker rights that Martin Luther King championed in his final days. Take a look at my website, Winfield for Congress, and join me in my struggle to help bring to completion the unfinished business of the civil rights movement. Let's honor the memory of Martin Luther King, not with rhetoric, but with action. And let's fulfill his final campaign. Thank you.